Morning, everyone. Welcome to the news agenda. Happy Hump Day, and welcome to the news agenda with me, Fleet Street Fox. And today I'm joined by my fellow Mirror columnist Darren Lewis, who's not in a meeting room in Mirror Towers, but this is apparently his actual home where he actually lives, like that, as though he's in a meeting room. So we're going to go through today. We're going to go through the best stories of the day. We're going to discuss the woman who's allergic to Christmas, the most awful puppy show the BBC could possibly have come up with. And through it all, we want you to ask us your questions. Dig into the comments, ask us whatever's on your mind, and we'll do our best to answer them. I'm not going to be able to get through them, unfortunately. People are often quite angry that we can't answer their questions, but we'll do as many as we can in the time that we've got between now and 9:30. So what have we got today? Well, the Mirror, like many others, has splashed on the Gran who became the first person in the world to get the COVID vaccine. Margaret Keenan made history yesterday, and inside the paper there is loads of explainers about how we get the vaccine, how it works, whether or not it's safe, and what happens next. There's also a great interview with Dionne Warwick further in, which is totally worth a few minutes of your time to read. So go and buy the paper today and get all the get all the information on that. But first, Brexit has reared its head again, and 3 weeks before the deadline, we're no nearer a deal, having had 4 years to get one. So Boris is off to Brussels tonight for dinner with Ursula von der Leyen to cock it up properly. Now, Darren, do you think the fact that he is an over-promoted, half-assed newspaper columnist rather than a diplomat or a statesman is going to play well at that feast?
Well, I'm glad you sat on the fence with that one, because if you go that part, I might just come and join you on that fence. Listen, I think that description is totally in keeping with what we've seen from Boris Johnson so far. I think that this has been so ludicrous right from the start, Susie, that you might as well follow him to Brussels and send a guy with a tuba playing behind him, because Right, exactly. So he's going to have dinner with Ursula von der Leyen, and he's going to try and not so much reach a deal, but basically the idea is that they're going to look each other in the eye and sort of see if they can reach a compromise, that they can say kind of privately to each other, I'm willing to budge if you are, and maybe in theory that might allow talks to get going again. But the problem is this, you had Michael Gove basically saying that there's got to be a movement on both sides, but the UK doesn't want to budge on any of its terms. It wants the movement to be on the side of the EU. And the EU are basically looking at Gove, Johnson, and the band of circus freaks and basically saying, no.
How can we negotiate with you people? You've got bow ties that spin around and water comes out of them. What? Shoes.
And I don't know as well, I think the fascinating aspect of all of this is that the diehards and the people who feel that everything is in keeping with the the UK's bullish stance all the way through this. We are going to get this deal. We are going to get Brexit done. This has been soundbite politics all the way through. And when it comes to actually the beef, where's the beef? You realise that beyond the sound bites, there isn't really a coherent strategy. There isn't really anything other than this is what we want. We're not prepared to compromise. If you don't give it to us, we are going to leave anyway. But if we do leave, what does that mean? That could have a worse impact on the country, arguably, than the pandemic, on jobs, on livelihoods, on businesses. We've got all these adverts telling us get prepared for the 31st, get ready, get prepared. But are the UK government prepared?
Exactly. And businesses are struggling to get prepared because they don't know what it is they're supposed to be getting prepared for. It's toddler politics. Now, as Robin says, is this where Boris sells us out? Robin, I'll refer to what Darren just said there about how they've all got to make it look like they're tough. And I'll read you out a little bit from this morning's Mirror Politics newsletter, which says, Downing Street is briefing to anyone who listened that a deal isn't certain. The Prime Minister is prepared to walk away. Frankly, the theatrics and brinkmanship from both sides is becoming tiresome. Before we reach a final decision, we have to watch some leaden-footed choreography by London and Brussels so they can sell the outcome to their domestic audiences. That's what's happening now, okay, is that both sides, particularly our government, who are briefing all the right-wing newspapers, of whom there are more than left-wing newspapers in this country, all the pro-leave newspapers. There's telling them, look, we're being hardball, we're going to walk away, there's blah, 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 it's not looking good, we're going to make them move. And then after this meeting, and after there is whatever final compromise there might be, and there's bound to be one, they'll be able to come out and make it look like they have played hardball, so that people like you, Robin, don't think you've been sold out. And then a few weeks later, when journalists start going through the small print, they go, oh, hang on, we've suddenly compromised on that thing we said was a red line a couple of years ago, and that one's been crossed as well. Because the truth is, Robin, in order for any kind of deal to work, everyone has to compromise. You don't get everything you want. It's like having a Christmas list and you ask for, jam and unicorns. You're probably going to get some jam, but you're probably not going to get a unicorn. So, this is the thing, isn't it, Darren? They have to just.
Susie, that when he said, "Is he going to sell us out?" My thinking was, why don't you ask his other wives? Although that would have been a bit of a low blow, but I mention it because trust is an issue with Boris Johnson. Trust in what he says, what he promises, what he goes on TV to tell the nation he can do. We've seen many times Boris Johnson writing checks that he simply can't cash. And, when people ask that question, will he sell us out? It is a very real, not question, a fear. It's a very real fear, because he's promised a lot of people who he managed to convince that he could, to quote his soundbite, get Brexit done, that he could actually do it, that he could sit down around a table with the EU and convince them and compromise and come to a kind of adult arrangement. But he's never managed to do that. I think it was Roger Gale who was saying on Newsnight the other night that he actually didn't even think Downing Street understands the degree of antipathy towards the European Union, from the European Union towards the UK, and that whole plan to override the divorce deal. And okay, they're saying that they're not going to do it anymore, but the trust has been broken. And I just don't have any faith whatsoever that Johnson will not, to put it in the words of the questioner, sell us out. And that's what he does.
And now he also, it's been said, it says in the newsletter today, the first rule of negotiations is the greater you compromise, the louder you have to brag about how you didn't compromise. So the more we have the government telling us they didn't compromise, be more sceptical, viewers, because that's probably the truth. Now, there's got to be probably a deal at some point, because as Leanne's pointing out there are people who are worried about their medication. Now, the government says, Leanne, that they've got some agreements in place for medication to come in and to be pushed through. But that's at our ports. We cannot guarantee what happens in EU ports. So if there is any kind of a problem at the EU end, you may still have these issues. And this is one of the reasons why there is going to be a deal. Now, we have a deadline at the end of the year on December the 31st. And Boris Johnson, as a journalist, always missed his deadlines. It cost his employers money to hold the presses. It was inconsiderate to his colleagues who had to stay and work late. This is exactly what anyone who ever worked with Boris Johnson and any journalist could have told you was going to happen. But the EU remains our biggest trading partner, the world's biggest trading bloc, and it remains next door, right? So we have to do a deal at some point. If we crash this deadline, all that's going to happen is you'll have a few weeks of chaos in January, which is bad enough. I'm not minimalising that. But then the government is going to have to go back into negotiations for a deal. All that's happened here, if we don't get a deal now, is they haven't got a deal before the deadline. There will have to be a deal after that. Am I right, Darren?
You're absolutely right. And I think, I think that is the problem. And just as we're around the nation, I mean, I know you did a second ago the front pages, and you showed the picture on the front page of the Daily Mirror of the vaccine and the optimism that is starting to, I wouldn't say sweep, but just quietly move through the country, that maybe an end can be in sight. And then suddenly we could have the chaos in January of the failure to reach a deal by the deadline. and the impact that that's going to have on businesses who quite literally don't know whether they're coming or going. And so an agreement has to be reached in some way, shape or form. And it will mean, contrary to what Michael Gove was saying, that there has to be that movement on both sides. It cannot be that the UK are intransigent, are bullish, are flag waving, and they're just basically putting their hands over their ears and saying, we're not listening to you. This is what we want. If we don't get it, we are going to carry on regardless. It just can't happen.
No, we need a diplomat or a statesman on it to have one of those kind of, one of those Good Friday type agreements where everyone who's party to it can come away saying they had a win. And we don't have that currently in Downing Street, it would appear. Matthew, England's already benefiting from us leaving. Fact. We haven't left. We've transitioned. So the transition period means we are effectively still following all the rules. So it's very difficult to say that England's benefiting. Added to which, Matthew, you live in a nation state called the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And that affects Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland, where we have already seen people murdered, Lyra McKee shot in the head, and a resurgence of the provisional IRA. Added to which, there will be a further problem, and this is going to affect you in England, I'm afraid. We have an open border in Ireland, a border that we cannot control, is invisible, and yet we have to control as part of our trade somehow with Ireland. And what's going to happen there is all those crime gangs in Northern Ireland who started out as terrorists and have now found a way of making more money, but still want to fund some of that terrorism, will get a lorry load of meat that is is British and perhaps has fewer regulations and controls. They will move it across the border and they'll stick it in a factory at some point and they'll change all the stickers on the meat and they'll move it into EU certified territory and they'll make £50,000 on that kind of lorry load of contraband overnight, moving it across a border just by putting some new labels on it. And when and if that happens, Matthew, they will be funding the terrorists who may well start bombing campaigns in England again, and who your taxes are going to pay for the security services and the border agents to go and deal with again. And if we didn't do Brexit, we wouldn't have any of these problems at all. We'd have other problems, perhaps, but not these ones.
And I think
keep asking your questions, everyone.
One of the things that you just summed up there, I think that's it in a nutshell, isn't it? This isn't just about patriotism, flag waving, and getting one-upmanship, I should say. This is about real people's lives. This is about livelihoods. This is about the impact on people who have basically been through nightmares in other areas of their lives because of what we've seen over the past 10, 12 months. And suddenly this chaos is going to be wreaked on them. And from a government who continues to keep promising things that it can't deliver. And I really do fear, when you look at the things that you've just outlined there and the different ways in which people's lives can be wrecked, I really do fear for the next couple of months or so. Like I said, we're not expecting a deal to be reached, but we are hoping that they can get to a place today, Ursula von der Leyen and Boris Johnson, where we can have some optimism that at least they'll get around the table and start some constructive talks all over again.
Yes, and can I just point out that if fish can still enjoy their freedom of movement up and down the English Channel, it's a damn pity we don't give the same rights to human beings. Now, keep asking your questions, dig into the comments, and we'll get through as many as we can. But first, sorry, Teresa. That is what she just said, yes. Now, if you had to come up with the worst dog show it would be possible to imagine, it would be something about how to overbreed fashionable pedigree mutts in order to make cash. And what idiot would suggest something like that, Darren? And yet, the BBC has commissioned a programme called Will My Puppies Make Me Rich? I'm not talking about these puppies, I'm talking about those puppies. And now, this is about Insta influencers cashing in on these dogs. Now, Darren, your children want a puppy at the moment. Does this sound like a responsible idea from our state broadcaster to you?
I'm staggered, really. I really am staggered. I mean, I looked at it in two ways, and I thought to myself, in this age of TV companies enjoying the notoriety of trending, of being the story, and maybe they could make the tweets afterwards. Maybe there was something about it that the BBC were trying to enjoy, get the publicity out of it or whatever. But this looks like a real idea that they've come up with under the guise of a legitimate concept, and I just can't see it. Will my puppies make me rich? I mean, are we? We're thinking about the money.
To be fair, this sort of designer dog show, the designer dog is a huge issue. These are overbred dogs who often have health problems because of the way they're bred. Instagram influencers are making things trend, making things fashionable. They're getting paid to do certain content and so on. So if they are using a particular animal that they've got from a particular breeder or that they've bred themselves, and they're kind of promoting this and selling it, then that is an issue that the BBC perhaps should be looking at. And to be absolutely fair, they've commissioned this, it's not coming out yet, but the production team and the BBC say that they're exploring a lot of these issues in the programme. So the programme sounds more responsible than the title, if you see what I mean.
I think that's what it is. I mean, I'm looking at a comment from the BBC Three controller, and she says that it aims to explore and discuss what constitutes good and bad practice in the world of dog breeding. I just don't think it's sold particularly well. And for me, you're right what you said before. My kids, they do want a puppy. They're very keen to get a puppy. They're on my case all the time. And we're actually, funnily enough, watching another program on another channel about precisely about the idea that if you want a puppy, the work that goes into making sure you get the right puppy for you, because this is about animal care. This is about ensuring that the animal that you do end up getting can be looked after, but also the places that you get these animals from are looking after the animals well as well. So it may well be that the package that this whole thing is wrapped up in is probably worse than the actual show itself, and maybe I'm doing them a disservice, and hopefully I'm not. But at first glance, it just looks to be something that panders to this whole designer era,
really shallow. Yeah, and they have changed the name.
If I'm really honest, Susie, when I saw When My Puppies Made Me Rich, I wondered, oh my goodness, is this before or after The Watershed? And I was a little bit concerned about it, but I think I realized that it was something that they had planned to hopefully do responsibly, and as I say, maybe hopefully I'm not doing them a disservice.
Well, it's got a lot of dog campaigners where the RSPCA are concerned about it, and I'll just give you one quick bit of advice, Darren. I got a dog a few years ago, and I followed the advice my parents gave me, and they've had dogs for years. And this is him and his little puppy. That's Billy, everybody. He's a blue Merle rough collie, and that's when he's eating the Daily Mail. Right, which, as all sensible people do. There you go. There's another picture on there of him with me having a big old cuddle. Now, yes, Louis, you're right. Dog breeding does need to be very closely monitored, mostly only in it for the money, not for the love or future of the dog. There's a lot of that going on, especially after the pandemic when people were buying dogs in a bit of a panic. But when I got my Billy, I got him from a reputable breeder who had already chipped and vaccinated him and had the certificates to prove it, and registered him with the Kennel Club because he's pedigree. And what's more, when I went into the pen where he was with his siblings, his other puppies, I saw him with his mother. So you know how they interact and how long they are staying with their mother, because some puppies are taken from their mothers far too early, and their mothers do an awful lot of training the puppy, like, we outside our bed kind of thing, which helps you when you start house training your puppy. And the most important thing my parents told me was I just stood there and I let the puppies come to me. And Billy came and he sat on my foot and he wouldn't go. And there was 6 puppies, and I tried to go and look at all of them and give them a cuddle and see how they were. Billy just stayed right by me and sat on my foot and said, "You smell of custard creams. I'm coming with you." And he chose me. And if your dog chooses you, it's the right thing for you. That's what you should teach your kids. And it's really difficult because if you're in somewhere, you see cute puppies and they're all a bit nervy or they won't come to you, you have to leave. You have to leave that puppy behind. But you wait until the puppy comes to you. And as William says there, don't buy puppies from puppy farms. Don't buy them from small ads. Don't buy them from the internet. Don't buy them from classifieds. Buy them from a farm if you possibly can, because all those Hollywood films are right. Buy them from reputable breeders. Buy them when you are able to see where that puppy is living. If it's in someone's house or their garden, you go and see it, and you see them with their mum, and you let them come to you. Let the dog choose you. That's the best thing. Now, keep asking us your questions. We've got a couple more things we want to go through, and then we're going to let you go on about your day. So we first want to show you the picture of the day that's in the paper. This is an amazing shot, right? There's a whole bunch of different photographs that's been taken for over in the weather we've had at the moment, these clear, crisp nights. And this is an amazing photograph there of the Milky Way. Darren, you can see, if you just put your head slightly on the right, that clear sort of band of stars where there's looks like clouds, that's just big collections of stars in the Milky Way, because and it gives you this perception that the Earth is actually, we're on the yang and we're out at the unfashionable end of the galaxy, as Douglas Adams said. And you know, that's where the rest of the billions and billions of stars spread out through space. I think that's absolutely amazing. I don't see the Milky Way down here. It's always too cloudy or foggy, but that's beautiful.
My oldest son is very, very much in the last few weeks into astronomy, just like that, as teenagers do, and he'll love this. It was a picture taken with the Hubble Space Telescope, and it's. I'm sorry.
That's They're on the phone.
So I do apologise. That's my sister. I do apologise. I remember your mum rang, didn't she?
Yeah, I have to text her now and say, "Mum, I'm on air." Shh, every time. It's a great picture, so have a look through that. And now, finally, to the story of the day. This is about a very unfortunate, or fortunate, depending how you look at it, woman called Victoria Osborne. Now, she is allergic to Christmas, in particular to fake trees, decorations, scented candles, wrapping paper, and she also gets migraines from flashing, twinkly Christmas lights. Although somehow she's managed to post a picture there with tinsel around her neck, so it's not that bad, plainly. But doctors are bemused at this allergy, but it means that her son Gabriel, who's 11, looks very chuffed there in the picture, as you can see, has to do without all his normal Christmas decorations. Now, Darren, do you think this makes Christmas impossible, or is it completely irrelevant to the big day?
I think it might not be impossible, because I was looking at this story and I saw a picture of her with tinsel around her neck and a Santa hat on. And it left me a little...
Maybe she can the photograph.
Yeah, well, indeed. I mean, listen, I think what she will have to do quite clearly is try and see if she can maybe do it under another name. I can't really come up with any sensible solution to what she does about this, actually. I was trying to think maybe she could do it under another name, or maybe she could let her son celebrate Christmas with relatives while she basically is the Grinch at home. Maybe I'm being a bit unfair to her.
Yeah, or maybe he could decorate his room or something. I'm sure they're trying to find ways around it. But if she gets this painful reaction, she says her son's quite understanding. And, you know, all this tat, despite what I've said previously on these broadcasts about Boniface trees and how we owe the Christmas tree to St. Boniface. Look it up, Darren, if you haven't heard my rants on this topic. And, you know, this isn't really quite what Christmas is about. She says they go for a walk, they still have the meals, they do what they can. It's just she's got to stay away from the preservative chemicals in some of these things, which seems sort of fair enough. And, you know, how much we spend on all this plastic, it's not really what Christmas is about, is it?
Absolutely. And on the one hand, I think you said a few minutes ago, she's probably one of the lucky ones, because you look at the amounts people do spend around about this time, the food that gets wasted, the time they spend jostling in crowds. I mean, at the moment, even though we do have a pandemic, you still do get people jostling in shops, in crowds, in central London and in shopping centres, looking for what they describe as bargains during a very difficult time health-wise. So maybe she's one of the lucky ones if she spared all of that and also the expense as well. So yeah, if I was her, I'd pack my son off to some in-laws or some friends and enjoy a nice something very nice to drink. I almost said the wrong thing there, but something very nice to drink at home, and then just wait for the whole day to be over.
Yeah, I'm sure that the lack of tinsel going up the vacuum cleaner isn't probably a bad thing either, to be honest. Now, DJ Vince wants to talk to us about Brexit. More Ramona bias rubbish. Maybe try reporting on the news and not your personal opinions. I don't know what you think this program is, but it's not the newspaper. It's talking about the news. We had 3 years of Steve Bray. Of course, if you may remember, he's the guy outside Parliament with his big megaphone saying, "Stop Brexit," and his big mouth chanting to stop Brexit. And you just had to slip a picture of him in, didn't you? I didn't do it, but yeah, there he is. Mirrors bias garbage. Now, DJ, you are entitled to your opinion, and I've just shared that with everybody, right? So your pro-Brexit opinion is out there now. I am helping promote it to the many thousands of viewers that we have on this Facebook live show. So A, not biased. B, if it's rubbish and garbage, I would have expected you, and would like, if you want to do so, to put in your comment how Leanne's concerns about medicine are unfounded and give us the reasons for it. I would like you to discuss the Northern Irish border that we talked about earlier on, and how it is not going to be possible to exploit different meat certification rules going across that border. If you have a problem with what we've said and provided to you as facts or supposition or assumptions or anything else you want to call them, then please give us your reasons for it. Use some logic. This is why so many Brexiteers are attacked and accused of racism and ignorance, is because there doesn't seem to be any substantiation for the things that you say. Provide them, I'll get them out there. I'm a journalist. We'll get them out there, won't we, Darren? But if we don't see them, mate, what can we do?
Absolutely. I mean, this isn't about being entrenched in one opinion on one side and not seeing the other side. This is about raising real concerns. And we know what they are: the fishing rights, the business competition rules, how well is a deal going to be policed? All of the things that you've just mentioned. I think this is about raising those concerns and discussing them and finding a way through, not just waving a flag and saying those things are irrelevancies. What we just want is to get Brexit done. Sometimes you have to cut into it, drill down and find out what is it
actually involved.
Exactly.
You're a bit nearer the day now. And I wrote a column only the other day saying that, talking about the fishing rights and saying that there are some clear pro-Brexit arguments for taking back some of the fishing rules. For example, the EU sets their quotas higher than science wants to replenish the fish stocks. So in our waters, we could lower the quotas, which would affect our fishing fleet, but we could lower the quotas in order to promote more fish stock growth, right? That's a pro-Brexit argument I made. But the arguments being made for fish by the government are tripe, because most of our catch is mackerel and we mostly sell it to the EU. We need to have a deal about access to our waters and their waters, and we fish in their waters too. So this is half the trouble. Now, Mike says, now that the Supreme Court has thrown out Trump's latest madcap scheme to hand him the presidency, 9-0 against. Oh, that's got to hurt. That's a ding, isn't it? Will he finally admit defeat? The answer, Mike, is no. But what I would like to say, and Darren, aren't you enjoying this too, is that not only has he lost by the greatest margin of any incumbent president ever to a candidate who's won the greatest votes of any candidate president ever, but he has lost every time he's gone to court. He's lost every time these guys have run a press conference and Rudy Giuliani's hair dyes come down his face. He's lost more often and more dramatically than any president in history. He's such a loser.
The whole thing was always more convincing than a Matt Hancock crying. And I think as far as Trump is concerned, I don't think it will lose him any of the support that he has from his base. These people are diehard Trump devotees, and so that won't change. But I think a little bit like a lot of the people who are realizing we might have been sold a lie over Brexit, I think with Trump, a significant number of people might start thinking, all of this press conferences that Giuliani was holding, all of the people that were standing around the lectern saying, we've got evidence of this, we've got evidence of that. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't. And I think we all know what the answer to that is.
Yeah, there's a vocal minority in all these issues which say everything's fine, but the surveys and the polls show actually public opinion has been pro-Remain pretty much consistently, and also it's starting to move away from Trump. So perhaps in 2021, the world will align slightly more firmly on the correct axis of right and wrong and good and bad and right and left, so we all know where we are. That would be helpful, wouldn't it? Let's try going into Christmas feeling positive like that. And remember, if you can have decorations up and you're not allergic to them, get yourself a Boniface tree, stick it up, send me the royalties and chocolate money. Thank you for watching, everybody. And thank you, Darren, for joining me. And we'll see you all next week for some more News Agenda. Bye.